her talk about the song Peacock, Kary Perry makes no bones about the fact that it's a sexual innuendo. She says that it's a very rare thing to see a peacock, and especially to see it with its feathers spread out so it's in all its colorful glory. And this is used as a metaphor for male sexual display, particularly a certain portion of the male body as far as I can see. This is important to interpreting a portion of the Wide Awake video, because in the video on the making of Wide Awake, the girl who's to play the younger version of Katie in that video is introduced to the horse that is used to play the unicorn. And she's petting the horse, and Katie says that the horn is there only part of the time. It's a magical thing that only shows up sometimes. In the context of Peacock, this takes on a particular meaning, that the unicorn his horn then is a symbol for male sexual display, and even display of the male organs. This is a strange way to interact with your innocent younger self, but the theme of loss of innocence and attempt to regain that innocence runs all through all the component videos that go into contributing to the meaning of Wide Awake. From the very beginning, there are references to other myths that are about trying to advance yourself and become divine or eternally young by sexual means. And all of these attempts fail. In California Girls, there are Garden of Eden hints about with the snakes made of candy. In I Kissed a Girl, there are references to the myth of Narcissus, and Narcissus was the offspring of a woman's attempt to mate with a river god. In E.T., the mating with the god becomes more explicit. It's a lot like the story of the abduction of Persephone, who saw the flower of Narcissus, was distracted, and then got carried off to the underworld by Hades. When Katie's character in Wide Awake reaches the underworld, she's gotten there by all these unnatural seductions and matings that should not have taken place. There are people trying to get to the top by sexual means and then end up descending instead. So on her way out of the labyrinth, Katie and her younger copy of herself confront the same sorts of things. They have several confrontations with horny guys, literally. Two of them are minotaurs. Now, in the minotaur myth, there was a queen of Crete, I believe, and there was a bull given as a sacrificial offering to the gods. It was supposed to be a sacred bull, and she wanted some of the power of this bull, so she had one of her artisans make a model of a heifer, and she crawled it inside it to fool the bull into mating with her, and the offspring of this unnatural mating was the minotaur. So you have these strange combinations of creatures, much like chimeras, combinations of different genes put together, and they're one means of pursuing genetic immortality. And so there is something there that's of value, but people pursue it in a way that isn't successful. So you have the offspring of these unnatural matings that Katie confronts, or her younger self confronts, on the way out of the labyrinth. So we see the girl stomps her way past the minotaurs, and then we have Katie meeting Prince Charming, who's riding a unicorn, a mixture of a horse and a goat. And both of these things have horns on them. Now, Katie rejects these horned creatures on her way to at least getting her younger self out of the labyrinth. But horns have all sorts of mythological meanings, and they have a lot of positive attributes. One of them is the unicorn's horn. The unicorn's supposed to be associated with purity, which is, and it could be captured only by virgins. So presumably if Prince Charming comes riding in on a unicorn, he must have been a virgin, and yet he's crossing his fingers behind his back as he meets Katie. So Either it's an illusion, or he's lying about being a virgin, or there's one of the other means of horns, which is that you're a cuckold. Someone who's said to have worn the horns is said to be sexually potent, like a bull, or other sexually powerful creature, but that means that your mate is off being sexual with someone else. You're being cheated on. One possible meaning, then, is that Prince Charming really has some intention of finding a mate somewhere else, or he's secretly planning a liaison with someone other than Katie. Now, Katie punches him out, and she pushes him off, much like the little girl pushed the Minotaurs away. But when you reject these creatures with the powers symbolized by horns, there are valuable things you lose at the same time. Katie makes a younger version of herself who has both the characteristics, I think, of a vampire and a clone, because she's a younger version of Katie. But she doesn't fully make use of all the powers represented by horns, because another one is the cornucopia. That's the horn of plenty, so it's a symbol of abundance, the ability to make all of something that you could possibly want. And it seems that by rejecting these symbols of male sexual display, which were what got her into trouble, in a way, in getting into the labyrinth in the first place, she's throwing out the good aspects with the bad ones, as far as I can tell. Because the route to eternal youth would be to have an ultimate abundance of cells, cells that keep multiplying and reproducing themselves indefinitely, rather than being able to copy themselves only a limited number of times. And the center of research for this sort of thing is, of course, California, which is referred to in several of Katie's other videos. So all of these meanings interlink, and they reflect the attempt to bring different elements of eternal youth together, which aren't quite successful. However, the most difficult political sell in terms of cloning is its possible use for having a baby. People have been much more receptive to the idea of using cloning to make replacement cells that just get put into someone's body, but there's been much more opposition to the idea of starting a whole new person with it. So in that sense, Katie is taking the much more politically difficult route, and the more important route to take to eventually get acceptance of cloning for replacement cell purposes. And just by having this video up, it allows me to link to it and generate traffic to talk about the issue, as with some of the other ones I've talked about. So in that respect, it's a wonderful thing to have this video up. And it might be something of an integration of the overall themes, in that Katie rejects reproduction with males because there is one way of producing stem cells and potentially starting a pregnancy without a man at all. That's called parthenogenesis, or virgin birth. That would lend another interpretation to the idea of rejecting Prince Charming, because even if he is a virgin, he's still not offering youth or means of reproducing the same person you started with by sexual reproduction. So if you have virgin birth without the virgin man, that is potentially the reason for punching out Prince Charming.